Hey everyone, it's Andrew Schiffman.
Harry Turcott here. We both worked at MTV in the music and talent department in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, it was a time where music videos, TRL, The Jersey Shore, and the Osbournes ruled the airwaves.
Yes, Andrew, those are some great years. So tune in every week as we catch up with old MTV coworkers, record label execs, VJs, and artists.
I can't wait, Perry. We'll give you insights into meeting superstars before they were superstars and some juicy secrets from that golden age of MTV.
So grab your headphones and get ready to relive the era of music television and the people who shaped a generation.
Welcome to the Music Lounge, our first podcast. Myself and Perry Turcott,
Hi there.
MTV veterans, and we have Steve Gottlieb today.
Welcome, Steve.
You are a jack of all trades.
Sure.
So, Steve, tell us about yourself. Give us a bit of background.
So my first job out of college was for a trade magazine that covered the music video business. And part of that involved collecting and sorting playlists and rotations from MTV. And then we started doing video promotion at some point where I started to get even more involved with MTV. We also held a conference. The main thing that I'm doing now is video promotion, where I commission music videos for various record labels and other artists. And that also came to be through all of the connections that I made through that magazine. So basically, my whole adult life is shaped by replying to a Village Voice ad. So it's a whole bunch of things that no longer exist that define my life.
That's great.
Amazing. Who was your favorite person at MTV?
Clearly, it's Andrew Schiffman.
I love it. Good answer. Good answer.
So, Steve, that brings up another question that I have for you is, so you said commissioning music videos. We've heard the term music video commissioner before.
Sure.
What is that exactly?
Yeah, it's kind of a glorified title. It kind of implies a lot more power than the job sometimes has. But basically, the process of making a music video is called commissioning, and then the person who oversees it is called the commissioner. If an easy way that I describe it to people who are not in the business is it's kind of like being the executive producer on the client side. So basically, it's all about finding the right ideas and the right directors for songs to make music videos, and then making sure that everything is aligned as it should be, both creatively and financially. And then making sure, the train stays as on the tracks as possible throughout the whole process.
That's not always easy with artists, is keeping the train on the tracks.
Yeah, and with music videos, you're dealing with multiple artists, so you're dealing with a recording artist who has a point of view that's usually pretty strong. There's a director who also has a creative point of view that can be very strong. The DP who takes care of the lighting and the camera work will have an opinion. The art department will have an opinion.
That's cool.
What would you say is your biggest career highlight?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff. I got a Lifetime Achievement Award from the MVPA, which is the Music Video Production Association.
Woo!
That
Excellent.
I've managed to live an extra 10 years, so it was a little premature.
You could just quit now,
I should have quit then.
Mic drop. I'm done.
So that's a highlight. The last video that I commissioned is a number one hit on Spotify, which is, very exciting. So that's a great thing to see.
So, any fun or quirky or unexpected experiences or artist stories that you can share? During your time when you were kind of coming into MTV on a regular basis with artists to, either premiere a video or or get them to meet us in the music lounge.
So when I used to do music video promotion, I kind of lucked into the situation where I became the indie rock guy at a time when indie rock was a genre that people paid more attention to in terms of the music business. Um, so I got to work with a lot of labels that I really loved and a lot of artists that I really loved. So it was really a treat on a lot of levels where I was doing work for Mom and Pop Records, I was doing work for Downtown Records, I was doing work for Danger Bird Records, and these were all, I'd say, pillars at that time for that genre of music, and it was what I really loved to listen to personally. So some days were like, hey, do you want to bring Lucius up to MTV and VH1 and let them play live for you know, the staff? And it was like, yeah, I'll definitely do that. One of the main goals that I always had when I was working with artists and promoting them was I kind of believe that one-on-one experiences were just the way to go. And we would always advocate really strongly. And when I say we, it's me and my colleague Lou Smith, who I worked with a lot and who I'm sure will be on the show at some point.
Absolutely. Yep.
But we would always advocate really strongly to bring our artists up to MTV and play in the artist lounge. And that was always, the best look that we could possibly get. Um, bring an artist up, have them ideally perform a couple songs, um, and let the programming staff and the music and talent staff meet them, get a vibe for them, build some organic connections. And it was just,
We liked it when you guys brought up food as well.
we'd sometimes bring in catering. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, we knew our audience pretty well.
Drinks in the afternoon, It's
Yeah.
5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it was a good time. And the other good thing about being in the building was once you got in the building, things would happen just through the magic of weird connections.
Yeah.
Um, one story, for example, when Mom and Pop first started working with Courtney Barnett, we brought Courtney up to MTV to do a meet and greet and play a couple songs acoustically. And it was really great. And then one of our friends from VH1 came in and she was in kind of a frantic state. And it turned out that whoever the guest was for their morning show had canceled and they needed an artist to fill the gap. And it was a very easy pivot to be like, hey, we have Courtney Barnett here. She's great. And, she made her cable TV debut on VH1.
Amazing.
It was a really spur of the moment opportunity that happened by accident.
Yeah.
So you would get in the building and things would happen. You would be in there and you would run into somebody from the news department, and all of a sudden you would get this news piece rolling. Or you would talk to one of the music supervisors and they would be like, oh, we're looking for music for a show. And you could go up there with an agenda, but just through the way the company was structured then, things would just happen and creative things would just spring up.
They were
Um,
great times. I didn't, I forgot about those just being at the right place at the right time. Did you work with the Black Angels? Was that one
well,
of yours?
it's funny you mentioned that because that was the other story that I was going to
I
mention.
love those guys.
I was working for Blue Horizon, and they were managed by a manager who I've done a bunch of work with, Nick Stern, and we somehow not only convinced MTV to let us bring up the Black Angels, but they decided to film it internally for some purpose that I don't remember. So the Black Angels, for anyone who doesn't know, is like, for lack of a better term, this great psych rock band from Texas. Very left of center. But this really powerful, atmosphere changing band. So we
Yeah.
brought up this band to play in the music lounge. And usually in the music lounge, you're acoustic and kind of stripped back. For this, we weren't stripped back. Like we it wasn't full electric, but we brought in the whole band. And the label was being run by Seymour Stein and Richard Gottlieb, who are both legendary.
Yeah.
God bless Seymour. And they both came up to introduce the band to just add a level of, gravitas to the proceedings. A lot of what MTV would play was pop at that point. And a lot of what would be brought into the, music lounge for performances were very like play the hits and get out. And it was almost like we brought the Velvet Underground into this corporate sort of environment, and just for like, the 15 minutes they played, like it just changed the air around us.
Yeah.
It like was just this really kind of trippy, cool experience where it was like, like holy shit, they let us do this. And that was cool. And there were
Yeah.
definitely people in the room who I'm sure were like, what the fuck is going on? But there were also people, like you, Andrew, and other people who were like, oh,
It's incredible.
this is the kind of thing we're looking to support
Yeah.
on, be it Subterranean, which was the alternative music show.
I think it was just before we brought back 120 minutes, because this would have been perfect for that. And I think it was probably a year or two before that, because I took that over maybe 2010-ish, I think, 9, 10. So
That was another really good memory because it was good to bring up stuff that people didn't expect.
yeah.
Um,
But
Another time we brought up City and Color, who our friend Yomi, who now works at Apple,
yeah,
um, used a City and Color song as his wedding song. So I, of
amazing.
course, went up to the artist and said, hey, his wedding song was so and so, and
Right.
you should surprise him and play it. And of course he did. And of course our video got played. And yeah, and it was like a really cool, fun time. And you would be in the building and you would run into colleagues from other labels. I remember once we were up there and we ran into our friend Hervé Romain,
Hmm.
who's no longer with us, who was working at Interscope, and he was promoting a game music video. And he was just like, come along here, we'll go and sit in some meetings. And we were
You
like,
could do
sure,
that back then. Yeah. Different
we'll
time, different
we'll
time.
hang out.
Yeah.
And I remember he was playing this game song where, like, instead of like snare drums, there were gunshots,
Mm.
and he was playing it. And the guys in the news department are like, it sounds like gunshots, we can't play that. And Hervey's like, no, they're not gunshots. It's just a snare drum. And yeah, I mean, it was just at that point in time, MTV was the center of gravity for the music video and the music business in general.
Yeah.
Like, and you would go up there and you would always run into people, and that's just the way it was. And
It was a good era too, I was there from 2000 to 2012. That was definitely at its peak, and then it just went off the cliff a little bit. Were there any artists that you worked with where you had that "I told you so" moment where you kept pitching them and pitching them, no one was on board, and then for some reason something happened and they became supported by every department.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I went to a Jim James show with one of your colleagues, and who I was working with then, and I told her like, "Oh, you got to check out this artist Flume,
Mm,
who's on Mom and Pop, this new electronic signing." And she was in charge of a lot of the electronic sort of leaning stuff. And it was similar to, like, I knew there was a connection to what you were already playing,
right.
but I knew that it was a little more adventurous than what you were playing. So it was a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And it was exciting to see the story go from, me just mentioning it to somebody in your department at a show, to sending them the music, to all of a sudden being asked to play a promo concert in New York for MTV, and the co-headliner was Chainsmokers. And I remember when Flume was playing, the Chainsmokers guys, and this is back when Chainsmokers were on that first hit record they had, before they kind of became as established. Like,
Yeah.
they were kind of like a one hit sort of band at that point.
Similar sounding artist, Flume, definitely.
But I remember they were watching Flume, and the looks on their faces were like, "Oh, holy shit."
Yeah.
Um, and then, just seeing it grow, like, just, that was always the fun thing. The fun thing was, watching bands grow. Dangerbird Records was one of my big clients, and, I remember when they pitched me Silver Sun pickups as something to work, and I was like, "This is really good. This can work. I love this." And kind of we ran the table with that band on the Carnivus record, where
That is a
where
great example. Yeah. A lot of
Yeah,
where
hits from that.
awesome. Off the strength of that, I mean, we booked them for an MTV.com live performance. I believe that they were Discover and Download even at the time, and then they went on to get a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist.
Yeah, and it was awesome to, I mean, that's really the best experience when you're in promotion, is kind of to like be with a band and watch them grow. And I remember, the first time I saw them was in a basement in Brooklyn. Um, and, I saw them at every stage from that point up to playing Madison Square Garden with Muse.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, they've gone from playing to 150 people in Brooklyn, back before Brooklyn was sort of, the mecca of everything, it seems.
I remember you took us to the Letterman performance as well.
And we did almost everything. Like, we did MTV Unplugged, we did all sorts of stuff.
I think it's important for us on the music programming side to really support and help artists break is really meaningful to us as well. Yes, we get to work with the superstars that don't need as much help, but I always personally like to support the up and comers. So that was a great story.
Hey, I was always feeling like, if I could get behind an artist and be there from the beginning and see them grow, that was that was so much more satisfying to me in my job there than to just be like, oh, we've got the new, Eminem video that we're going to put on as a premiere. I mean, that was great, but he was going to be big no matter what.
Yeah. And your internal relationship is key as well,
Yeah, and building trust and knowing,
because you're just the middleman, really. You want to trust that we elevate the artist on our side as well.
yeah, there's definitely a leap of faith that needed to happen on the side of all parties.
Yeah.
And, what people don't, I think, realize about MTV is almost everyone who worked in that building, especially in the departments you guys were in, were people who loved music and loved discovering music and lived to turn other people on to that music. And yeah, you played the hits, and you couldn't support something unending unless it was reacting on some level. You'd have to defend your work at some point, but
Unless you had someone passionate that could take that leap of faith and be the entity to really kickstart a career and have that story, which doesn't happen too much, but
yeah, we also were
you know,
lucky with some of these bands,
yeah,
where
it's nice to break the artist and us to get that the recognition as well.
I mean, having a champion inside the building was always really valuable, and and it always helped bring things to as high a level as possible.
Yeah, you came to us with an expectation as well, and I think it's
Sure. Yeah.
also good for you to reiterate that back to your clients on, because you knew our programming so well, you had an inkling if it would fit, and sometimes we would try it here, and potentially the next step would be to move it over here and here to watch it grow.
Yeah.
So
I kind of, there were always times of pleasant surprises, but I kind of went into a lot of things knowing what to generally expect. And it was, never a bad thing when the response exceeded the expectations, for sure. I mean, that was always great. But there were times when I would bring things in and I knew that they wouldn't go over well, but I just needed to do the due diligence for my clients and play it. And then, there were definitely, a lot of conversations that would happen where I'd have to go back to a client and be like, they don't like it, So if you want them to play it, you have to prove that this is a hit and that they're wrong. And, the way you prove it, if your department didn't like it, was with data,
yeah,
So a lot of the complaint that people have about the music business right now is that a lot of it is data driven. But back then, the data was different, and people would go with their heart and their ears first. But if they weren't feeling it, I would have to talk to the label, and I would have to be like, "Hey, go out and get 20 fucking DJs to play this record, get it to chart on something, and I'm happy to go back."
yeah,
And every time the story changes, I'll go back and I'll update them and I'll take another swing. And there were definitely a lot of projects where we didn't get what we wanted initially, just based on the strength of the song and the video. Um, but we would get something eventually because, it would start to react at radio, or we would start to develop a press story, or we would get um, a really good response at shows and touring. One of our friends, Lou Robinson, would always say, and I don't know if he remembers saying this, but I remember it. He would say, Polestar is the one stat you can't tweak, you can't fake it. People are coming out, buying tickets to shows and showing up. There's something going on. Pay attention.
that's
You know,
true. Yeah, it's a different story now.
The only thing I would add was that, a lot of people came in and they had two things in mind: TRL and MTV rotation. And the nice part about MTV at that time was that there was also so many other platforms where you could be featured, whether it was MTV2, The Rock Show, Subterranean, uh, Hits, Jams, MTV.com. And then there was, even music integration. So it was a time when there was a lot of different things that could help sort of break the artist across the network.
like I worked the first Manchester Orchestra album, which was on Canvasback, which at that point was going through Columbia Records. And, and we had champions at MTV. Um, you know, pe- like our biggest one still works at MTV as a music supervisor. And I didn't work the kind of music that would wind up on TRL too often.
Right.
Um, you know, so that wasn't necessarily the goal. The goal was, can we get some spins on Subterranean or
Yeah.
on 120 Minutes? Can we get the band in for an interview?
Yeah. I think it's important to look at just an ad on, you know, any platform on paper when the band is trying to book something separate. It adds fuel to the fire, right? So
Yeah, and there was a point in time, I mean, this is a very, behind the curtain sort of thing, but like, labels would create these, we'd call them one sheets, of like the latest marketing stories, and it was always a good feeling when the first line was something that I delivered,
right.
you know?
Let's have a little bit of fun. So I'm going to put 30 seconds on a timer.
Okay.
You should hear it. It's a familiar countdown clock.
Okay.
And try your best to answer truthfully. All right, here we go.
I'll answer.
All right. Air guitar or air drumming?
Air guitar.
Can you fall asleep on an aeroplane?
Very well.
What's your favorite artist?
Oh,
Quick.
Jane's Addiction.
What was your first concert?
Anthrax at the Headbangers Ball Tour.
Guacamole or salsa?
Guacamole.
Oasis or Blur?
Oasis.
Tequila or whiskey?
I don't drink.
We're done. Amazing.
You want the Oasis story or the Blur story?
Let's hear it.
So the other great thing about being in music video at that time was people valued us.
Did you work Noel? Was that you?
I worked Liam when he put out the BDI record.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I thought you worked high flying birds.
No,
Okay.
but I did work BDI.
I remember BDI, yeah.
Which was amazing, and Liam was in a great headspace, and was a total pleasure on every level. So fuck the haters.
Yeah.
But being in music video at that time, you would get invited to everything. So one of the things I got to go see was Radiohead playing at Irving Plaza on like the eve of OK Computer coming out.
Wow.
And I already knew the album because we were on the advance list. So we got the album ahead of time, and it came on this crazy glued Walkman cassette player with the full album on either side. I've still got it somewhere.
Wow.
And so, and after the show, we're just hanging out with a bunch of colleagues, people who were also in video promotion at other labels. And somehow we get into a conversation with Damon from Blur. So we're talking to Damon from Blur for a while. And he goes, "Oh, you're going to so-and-so's for the after party, right?" And we said, "Yeah, what's the address for it?" And he gives us the address, and he's like, "Come along." And we go outside and we get a taxi and we follow them. And we wind up at this sort of artist loft in like the West Village, where it's basically every English rock star and every local supermodel at this party. And we're just in the corner, sort of like, how did we wind up here?
Thank you for joining us today in the Music Lounge.
And tune in next week to hear more stories about your favorite era of MTV.